presentation of An Affair of Honor by Austin Stone, and presented to you by the Chilliwack Players Guild. My name is Astrid Bugling. I am the president of the Chilliwack Players Guild, and we're honored to be able to present this to you today. I'd just like to take a moment to thank our sponsor, Next Gen Hearing. Thank you very much. So if you have any problems, please go to Next Gen Hearing. We really like to thank them. They support all of our shows, and they support what we love to do, which is live theater. Please take a moment at this time to turn off any cell phones or any device that's going to make any kind of noise. And I will mention that there will be gunshots in the house, so be aware. It's nothing happening outside. It's all in here. It's all good. It's safe. It's safe. It's a missile. Now, I am pleased to present to you Ed Stone, the son of the playwright and novelist Austin Stone. Ed.
Thank you very much. What a turnout. You should give yourselves a clap, not me. Thank you all for coming here today. It's nice to see so many friendly faces, and there are a few out there. People I do know that have got friendly faces. I do hope you'll enjoy our BBC radio play Rerun, which is being performed by CPG colleagues. Many thanks to all of them for taking on the roles, and to Astrid for directing, and for Deborah for producing the play. The last time this play was heard, 66 years ago. Quite some time before televisions were in common use as entertainment for the family. My father would be very pleased to know his play is still being listened to after all these years. I should point out that many of the actors in my dad's plays went on to be well-known actors and actresses. I've left a list of players and a brief synopsis on your tables, and hopefully this will help you understand characters that are being played by our actors. It should be noted that these BBC radio plays were not performed in front of an audience. So you guys are very lucky. So in fact, you will be the first people to witness it live, assuming that you do not fall asleep during the show. Originally broadcast live in the BBC Birmingham studios in 1953, this was one of 9 plays written for the BBC Home Service by my father, Austin Stone. Born 1904, sadly died 1979. He also wrote 8 true crime novels during the years 1936 to 1975. I recently transcribed, edited and published his last book, Missing Murder Suspected, posthumously in my father's memory. Both the original manuscripts for the play and the book were found in an old box of documents left to me by my dad. I found these while searching for my family tree documents. I'd like to take this second to just say thank you to the Sardis Genealogy Group, Marlene's group, also the Agassiz Genealogy Group, and the Agassiz Library, who have helped me with some of the editing of the book. And also to Dickens Sweet Stalls. Anne, I saw you somewhere, put your hand up. Go on, be brave. Anyway, many thanks. Also, if anyone is interested, I do have copies of the book, Missing Murder Suspected, for sale in the back of the room. There's no charge for the editor's signature. The scene for the play, An Affair of Honor, is based on a period in the life of Lola Montez, a well-known Irish actress and dancer, who in 1844, whilst living in Paris, France, had an affair with composer Franz Liszt and a dalliance with Three Musketeers author Alexandre Dumas. While in Paris, she formed a romance with newspaper owner Charles Dujarier, who, while inebriated during a party, was challenged to a duel by Rosamond de Beauvoir. As a result, Dujarier was shot and killed. A note of interest, I did sort of mention earlier, but in this particular broadcast of this play, the part of Annabella was played by famous English actress Billie Whitelaw, CBE. Later on, in 1846, Lola moved to Munich and became the mistress of King Ludwig of Bavaria. Her story continues from there.
And now, an affair of honor.
Sorry, it's me again. The Paris of 1845 under King Louis Philippe was essentially a world of the theatres, the boulevards, a society in which a hasty word spoken in the heat of wine might well lead to a meeting next morning at some lonely spot in the Bois de Boulogne, where honour would be satisfied one way or the other. There was also a good deal of political unrest at the time, and therefore a corresponding rivalry between the two leading newspapers, La Presse and Le Globe, was on. Charles Dugerier, a brilliant young journalist, was part owner and editor of La Presse. He was also on very friendly terms with Lola Montez, already well known in England and the continent, later to become world famous. This story opens on an evening in early March at Charles Dugerier's apartment in the Rue Lafitte, where he is entertaining Lola Montez and others.
Cut and thrust, parry and riposte. So they go on, these two magnificent swordsmen, their blades flashing in the moonlight, high on the castle turret. Soon they have fought their way to the very edge. There is no further retreat, save into the yawning depth below. One of them must go over, or else be run through. But which? Which?
Not D'Artagnan, I trust.
And why not, my good Charles Dugerier?
Oh no, it wouldn't be D'Artagnan. That would mean the end of the story.
And the end of La Presse. I promised readers at least another fortnight of Three Musketeers, remember?
Today was the first time I ever missed an installment. Oh, Monsieur Dumas, you have all Paris, all France on tenterhooks. By 10 o'clock tomorrow morning, there won't be a copy of La Presse left on the stalls. And it's the same thing every day.
So long as it carries a serial by Alexander Dumas, eh?
Won't you please tell me who wins the fight on the castle turret? I just can't wait until tomorrow.
I don't even know myself yet.
You don't know? Good heavens, man, we go to press at midnight. And the sheets must be there at least an hour before that. I left word.
Don't worry. My friend, you shall have them in good time.
Oh, Monsieur is a genius.
A commercial genius would be more correct, my dear Lola.
You think my works will not live then, Charles?
At the present rate of output, more than 30 octave volumes in a single year, how could they live?
Oh, I don't agree. Monsieur Dumas has done something to Paris. People seem much gayer, happier, more carefree. The talk in the cafes and on the boulevards is no longer of politics and scandal, but of what is going to happen in tomorrow's installment. There's not a man, from the highest to the lowest, who doesn't secretly fancy himself as a sword-flashing hero like D'Artagnan. It has opened up an entirely new romantic era in public taste. How can I put it? An era of the cloak and the dagger.
The cloak and dagger era. My dear Lola, that's wonderful. I must make note of it.
And be sure that your rival, Le Globe, doesn't get it first. You have seen Rosamond de Beauvalon lately?
Is it possible to avoid anyone in Paris?
De Beauvalon is a dangerous man, my friend. Never forget that his brother, by marriage, is editor of Le Globe. That which your own paper has lampooned and held up to ridicule. In the political field, worse than that, thanks to my stories, the sales of La Presse have soared to make a laughing stock of Le Globe. And if I know de Beauvalon, he is not a man who thinks in terms of newspaper sales, but of personalities. And that means you, my boy.
Don't worry. I've done my best to humor the fellow. I even accepted an article of his the other week. Oh yes, de Beauvalon fancies himself as an author too, you know. We've not yet used it, of course. But anyway, he'll be there tonight at Annabella's party.
Annabella, eh?
Charles, if you please, is deserting me tonight for the more entertaining Society of Actresses from the Vaudeville Company.
Of course, Lola was invited too, but I have my own reasons for not wishing her to attend.
Should I be suspicious, Monsieur Dumas, or just plain jealous?
As the most feminine of women, my dear Lola Montez, I know you will be both. And for once, I bear a deep grudge against my friend D'Artagnan. But for him, I would stay and keep you company tonight. As it is, I must go home and finish the fight on the castle turret.
And for obvious reasons, I won't detain you.
Well, there'd be another revolution in France if no installment appeared tomorrow.
Don't worry, don't worry. I've never yet let my public down. The cloak and dagger age, eh?
A great man, a truly great man.
And a headache to poor editors like myself.
Charles, must you go to this party tonight?
Unfortunately. It's all in the nature of my business, remember?
Then take me with you.
No.
I have a horrible feeling that something is going to happen there tonight. I can't explain it. For one thing, you've never given any good reason for not wanting me to come too.
It's just that I don't consider it desirable company for you. After all,
Perhaps it is that you don't wish me to meet de Beauvalon. Is he such a lady killer that you doubt my constancy?
what do you think?
Or is it because of what Dumas said about him?
Of course not. You mustn't take any notice of Alexander. His imagination runs riot.
Nevertheless, you will be careful.
Careful. Of what?
I don't know. I tell you, I don't know. Except that there'll be much wine, and it goes to your head quickly. De Beauvalon will be there, and... Charles, am I right in believing that you love me?
Isn't it enough to know that I'd marry you tonight if you were free?
Well, that's just it. I've been bad, wicked already. I'm a notorious woman, I suppose. But it hasn't altogether been my fault. And yet, sometimes I fear that the punishment for my sins will be shared by someone I really love, by you.
Nonsense. You've been talking to too many authors and poets. This life of the boulevards is doing you no good. But I tell you, Lola, darling, in the spring I shall take you away on a long holiday. Provence, the Pyrenees, Seville, Madrid.
Oh, wonderful.
But for the moment, a glass of wine, and then I must change. In honor of her ladyship, Annabella of the Vaudeville.
Oh, my dear Roger Darcy, you are so droll, so amusing. I could spend a whole night long listening to your stories.
In which case, Annabella, I fancy my friend de Beauvalon here might be just a trifle jealous, eh?
I would indeed, and yet if it would please Annabella, well, I must confess myself a slave to her slightest whim.
And what about you, Monsieur Dujardin? You should devote a daily column in La Presse entirely to Roger Darcy's stories.
Oh, what a splendid idea. Splendid.
Surely you know by now, my dear Annabella, that La Presse, like its owner, appreciates an entirely different sense of humor.
Oh, come now, Rosamond. That isn't true. Is it, Monsieur Dujardin?
If de Beauvalon says so, then it must be. Nevertheless, it seems that he and I have this much in common. Just to please you, mademoiselle, I would change the entire policy of the paper.
I take exception to that remark. If Charles Dujardin must drink wine, then let him confine his compliments to...
Oh, Rosamond, don't be so jealous. So just silly and childish. Monsieur Desjardins was only joking. Wasn't he, Roger?
Yes. Yes, of course.
But,
And I, for one, am not amused.
but we are, aren't we, everybody? Waiter, more wine. Come on, everyone. After mutter at the card table. Oh, the evening has scarcely begun.
The bank wins.
And poor Monsieur Desjardins has lost another 500 francs.
Making 3,000 in all. Did ever a man have such a damnable run of cards?
No doubt Monsieur is much lucky in love.
Which reminds me, it must be getting on for 5 o'clock.
Charles, my good fellow, a word in your ear. De Beauvois has been trying to pick a quarrel with you all night. I've seen the devil's expression in his eyes every time he looked at you. Please leave now before he has one final go at making trouble.
Don't worry. I'm off now anyway.
The 500 francs, Monsieur Desjardins, you forgot to pay the bank.
Oh, yes, of course. Hello, I appear to have been cleaned out. I'll have to owe it, I'm afraid, until the bank opens.
Well, of course, that's understandable. You have had such wretched luck.
I will lend Desjardins 500 francs with pleasure.
Thank you, but I must refuse.
And why must you refuse? On the contrary, you would appear to be very good at accepting things. Articles, for instance, for the press. Articles which, however, don't get published.
Careful, Charles.
Well, is it unreasonable to ask why my article, accepted more than 3 weeks ago, has not yet appeared in print?
At this hour and place? Yes!
I don't agree. I demand to know why.
Then, since you must know, because you're only a small pebble on the beach, there are other, far more important writers to be considered, and you must take your turn.
So, you try to insult me?
On the contrary, you asked for it.
And you refuse my offer of a 500 franc loan?
Absolutely.
Why?
That is obvious.
I demand to know the reason.
Because I would sooner owe the money to the head waiter.
Then you have said enough, monsieur. My friends will call upon you tomorrow.
You fool, that's just what he wanted.
Come in. Yes? What is it, Gaston? Oh, by the way, these proofs are now corrected. Take them to the type room for resetting.
Yes, Monsieur Desjardins. In the meantime, there are 2 gentlemen here to see you.
2 gentlemen. Yes, of course.
Their cards, Monsieur.
Show them in, Gaston.
But Monsieur has not so much as glanced at their names.
As if it mattered.
Pardon, Monsieur.
Their names. Suppose you tell me, Gaston.
They are the Comte de Flair and the Vicomte d'Aigreville.
D'Aigreville, eh? Oh well, show them in.
Very good, Monsieur.
D'Aigreville. Birds of a feather.
I think you know why we are here, Monsieur Desjardins.
Not for the world, my dear Vicomte. I would rob you of your petty formal little speech. Besides, gentlemen, this is the first time for me, remember?
We represent Monsieur Rosemont de Beauvois, and we come to demand satisfaction for the insults which he received from you last night.
Insults received from me. What ridiculous nonsense. It was I who found myself provoked beyond the limit of human temper. In any case, the words on both sides were spoken in the head of wine. The whole thing is so utterly childish.
Are we to understand, Monsieur Desjardins, that you are unwilling to defend your honor?
Oh, no. No, of course not.
Then you would please name 2 of your own friends to act for you, Monsieur.
Let me see now. Alexandre Dumas
Dumas?
or Darcy. Roger Darcy.
Dumas and Darcy. We shall call upon them and make the necessary arrangements.
As the challenged party, Monsieur de Charrier, you have the choice of weapons. It's hardly necessary to remind you that de Beauvalon is a swordsman of quite some distinction.
And equally handy with a pistol, no doubt.
Monsieur de Beauvalon is a crack shot.
Whereas this, you see, this pen, that's the only weapon I've ever known from childhood. Fat lot of use in a duel.
You should have thought of that last night.
We await your choice, monsieur. Which is it to be? Swords or pistols?
Well, nothing much can go wrong with a sword, I suppose. And no doubt extremely painful. Whereas a pistol has been known to misfire. I choose pistols.
Pistols. Very well. It only remains now to discuss the final details with your friends. I bid you good day, monsieur.
Good day, Monsieur de Charrier.
Pistols for two, and coffee for one. Oh God, what am I going to tell Lola?
You are worried about something, Charles. It must be the very first time I've seen a shadow across your face. Tell me what it is.
It's nothing, I assure you. I'm just tired. That's all. It was a pretty strenuous party last night.
Charles, I was right after all. Something did happen last night, didn't it?
I told you I lost 3,000 francs.
Even that shouldn't worry you unduly. But it isn't that. It's something else. There was trouble last night, wasn't there?
Yes, but
What kind of trouble?
I tell you, there's nothing to worry about. It's just that, well, there'll be a meeting, of course.
A meeting? With whom? Oh, no, not de Beauvalon. Oh, my God, no! You can't do this, Charles. Do you hear me? You can't do it. You've never fought a duel in your life. Whereas de Beauvalon, it would be suicide. Murder. I shall go to the police and have it stopped.
Like all women, my beautiful Lola, you jump to conclusions.
You mean it's not de Beauvalon? Then who else could it be?
Oh, it's all rather childish, really, but, well, you know how these things happen over wine.
And women. But who is it? Tell me who has challenged you to a duel.
None other than my very good friend, Roger Darcy.
Darcy?
At least I always thought him my friend.
Roger Darcy?
Is it as funny as all that? After all, the pistols will be loaded, you know.
Oh, my darling. When you told me about a meeting, I could think of no one else but de Beauvalon. And my heart seemed to stand still. I was suffocated with the fear for you. But Roger Darcy? When and where?
The day after tomorrow, in the Bois de Boulogne.
Oh, it'll be which of two haystacks can miss the other first.
Possibly. Nevertheless, I wish to extract a promise from you.
Well,
I do not wish you to leave the apartment at any time tomorrow, on any pretext whatever.
but why not?
I've no power to command you, of course, but it is my dearest wish.
You will come and see me tomorrow night?
Yes, of course.
Then, very well.
Good evening, Monsieur Dumas.
I wish to speak to the Vicomte d'Ecville.
Yes, monsieur. This way, please. Monsieur Alexandre Dumas.
Come in, Monsieur Dumas. De Beauvalon and I were just having a final word together before tomorrow morning.
My apologies, gentlemen, for intruding.
I understand you to say, Vicomte, that all details for tomorrow's meeting were cut and dried. However, if Dumas is here to suggest alterations at the 11th hour, then I'd best leave you to it.
On the contrary, de Beauvalon, you will oblige me by remaining.
No doubt Monsieur Dumas has come to see the pistols I have offered to provide.
No.
I can assure you of their merit, monsieur. They cost 700 francs and have scarcely been used.
No, I take your word for it, Viscount. At the same time, it is quite unnecessary to remind you once again that under the rules of dueling, neither principal shall have access to or practice with the weapons beforehand.
Oh, that is understood, monsieur.
Good.
Do I take it then that we are honored with a purely social visit from the great Alexander Dumas?
It would be better still, gentlemen, if you regarded me at this moment as a citizen of Paris, rather than an author of distinction, least of all as one of Charles Dujarrier's attendants at tomorrow's meeting.
And the subject of your mission, Citizen Dumas?
To ask you to reconsider this gross, damnably unfair encounter, which can have but one outcome.
Reconsider it?
You know what all Paris is saying, and I agree, that this quarrel is not between two private individuals, but between two rival newspapers, Le Globe and La Presse. Mon Dieu! Since when have men fought duels in defense of their businesses?
My dear Dumas, this is but an overflow of your notorious powers of imagination.
You cannot deny having forced the issue, deliberately picked the quarrel, because your kinsman proves unable to hold his own in the world of pen and ink. You have taken it upon yourself to seek revenge in blood, upon a young man who has never so much as handled a weapon in his life.
A man who cannot handle a weapon should at least know how to handle his tongue. You are wrong, Dumas. I seek no more than honor demands, satisfaction for personal insults.
You expect the world to believe that? Look, de Beauvalon, I speak still as a citizen of Paris and not as Charles Dujarrier's friend. The encounter tomorrow may well result in death. Have you thought of that?
I have considered the matter from every angle.
In which case it would be murder, moral murder. You would have this man's blood on your conscience and take it with you to the grave.
Do you suggest that out of sentiment I withdraw the challenge, climb down to become the laughingstock of Paris?
I suggest to Beauvalon that there is still time to reach an amicable settlement with honor.
Then you waste your time.
Have you no scruples? No shred of a conscience?
Coming from Monsieur Alexandre Dumas, of all people, such sentiment is both interesting and amusing. Can this be the same man who has fired all France with a spirit of swordsmanship and the duel, of gay, unscrupulous adventure in which mere words count for nothing?
In my plays and novels, every fight is a fair one. Men meet on common ground with weapons common to both. You still find in each of them the spirit of chivalry, of sportsmanship, and fair play. But I see, as de Beauvalon says, I waste my time.
That is only too true.
Shall we say then, until tomorrow morning, monsieur, at 9 o'clock in the Bois?
The paper is put to bed, Gaston. You may go home and do the same yourself.
Thank you, Monsieur Dujarrier. But you surely don't think I could sleep tonight, do you?
Nonsense. You'll sleep like a top. You'll find certain letters on the desk here in the morning. if by any chance I should not be here by 11 o'clock, I want them delivered. You understand? Well, do you understand?
Monsieur, surely there must be some way out of...
Honor must be satisfied. That is the unwritten law of France.
Yes, Monsieur. I shall pray for you.
Thanks, Gaston. And now, good night.
Good night, Monsieur Dujarrier, and the very best of luck.
My dearest Lola, if you receive this letter, it will be because all is over, and you will know the truth. I cannot come to you tonight, for all my calmness is needed, and the sight of your face might tempt me to waver from my purpose. If you have cause to weep, it is better that your tears be shed over one who is worthy of you, rather than a coward. Life is sweet, but only when we see the grinning mask of death is it given to us to know just how sweet.
Magnificent de Beauvoron, a couple of bullseyes, and in this half light too. There's no question, the pistols suit you.
Just as well to have made absolutely certain.
The only difficulty will be to keep warm. Unless I'm mistaken, there's more snow on the way. Well, what's the matter?
I thought I saw a figure over there, beyond that far hedge.
Probably André, my head gardener. He's an early bird all year round. However, we better hide the pistols.
And as a preliminary step to keep you warm, my dear Decville, you should take breakfast with me at the Café Colette, a little favourite of mine on the edge of the Bois.
I fear there's scarcely time for that. Remember, we have to call up the gunsmith for more powder.
And I say it'll do no harm to keep them waiting. Would you have me go out to fight on an empty stomach? Besides, I have a busy day ahead of me after this meeting, to say nothing of a luncheon appointment with Annabella.
We are the first to arrive, I see.
And what a morning for a duel. Snow on the ground, more to come by the look of that leaden sky.
I fear you're right, Darcy. And if they keep us waiting long in this, we shall all be in need of treatment, eh, Doctor?
We've a healthy flask of cognac between us, four of us. That should prove the best medicine, I fancy.
And Charles, my friend, your teeth are already chattering with the cold. Come, have a swig of the cognac, and then a little walk to stretch our legs, eh?
Thank you. I am all right.
You'll never believe it, but I once challenged Balzac to a duel. I often wonder what would have happened had he not been taken seriously ill the night before. By the time he'd sufficiently recovered, our little difference had blown over.
Despicable, outrageous, to keep us waiting over an hour, and on a morning like this.
Some more cognac, Monsieur Dumas? As for me, I can scarcely feel my toes.
Perhaps he's had an accident, or I say, wouldn't it be a joke if de Beauvoron were taken ill, just like Balzac was?
Believe me, my friend, no such miracle had occurred to save Charles Dujarrier. This is a deliberate attempt to increase the demoralizing agony and suspense of our principal. Look at him, standing there, as pale as death and shivering with the cold. And what is that compared with the icy chill that must be at grips in his heart at this moment?
Yes, poor devil.
This cannot go on. I'll speak to him. Charles Dujarier, more than an hour has passed since the time arranged for this meeting, and there is still no sign of Rosamond de Beauvoulon. We may well say, therefore, that he has failed to keep the appointment. The doctor here and Darcy will agree with me on that. You would be at liberty now to quit the field without disgrace.
Of course, yes.
You will do so, Charles? Come, let us get back to warmth, civilization, and a good square meal.
No, I will fight. I am a Frenchman and my honor is very dear to me.
Believe me, Charles Dujarier, France will not forget this day in a hurry.
Listen, I thought I heard a carriage.
You're right. Here they come. At last.
1,000 pardons, gentlemen, for the delay, which I assure you was quite unavoidable.
Ye gods, do you think this is a summer's morning? I trust, Vicomte Tecville, that your principal is not suffering from the cold.
On the contrary, we are ready when you are.
You have the pistols.
Here, primed and loaded.
A handsome but no less formidable pair of weapons.
I noticed. Yes. This barrel is already blackened with powder.
The same thing applies to this one. And the metal is not so cold as might be expected, Vicomte Tecville. Both these pistols had been fired recently, this morning.
But not by my principal. Oh, I confess, gentlemen, I tried them out myself. They had not been used for so long, and I wanted to make sure that everything was in order.
We have your word of honor as a gentleman of France that de Beauvoulon has not used or handled these pistols?
As a gentleman of France, monsieur.
Then we cannot persist in the objection. Rosamond de Beauvoulon, I make this one final plea for an amicable settlement with honor.
As I told you last night, Dumas, you are wasting time.
Then let us proceed.
It is agreed that the combatants shall stand 30 paces apart. Upon the dropping of the handkerchief, each will advance 6 paces and then fire. Monsieur Darcy will perhaps drop the handkerchief?
Yes, very well.
$11, $12, $13, $14, $15. Now, Charles, get a grip on yourself, my friend. You feel warmer for the cognac?
Yes.
Good. At 30 paces, de Beauvoulon looks a very long way off, eh? But it'll be nearer 18 when you come to fire. Take careful aim. Restrain the breathing, and above all, don't be in too much of a hurry. You understand?
I understand.
Then, God be with you.
I can hardly bring myself to let this handkerchief go.
Heaven knows we've waited long enough for this moment. Now!
Dujarier has fired.
At random. All but into the blue, nom de Dieu, the idiot, the fool, I told him to...
Why doesn't de Beauvoulon fire? His pistol is jammed.
Not on your life. Can't you see? He has all the time in the world for a deliberate aim. And Charles must stand there. Merciful God.
I can't bear this no longer. Shoot, man! For God's sake, shoot!
I can see nothing for smoke. He's hit! Dujarier's hit! Quick, doctor!
I can do nothing for him. The ball has passed right through his face.
A bullseye for de Beauvoulon. This was murder, in its ugliest guise.
It seems he wishes to speak. Hurry, Monsieur Dumas. He hasn't long.
Charles, mon ami, my very dear friend.
Tell Lola I had to defend my...
He is gone.
A brave man, Monsieur.
Yes, brave. But how many of us know the true meaning of that word? Bravery is to do something of which one is mortally afraid. Myself, I have not even the courage to tell Lola, you will do this for me, Doctor?
If you wish it, Monsieur.
I said just now that France would not forget this day in a hurry. I say again, France will remember.
Paris, at all events, was not given a chance to forget. During the days that followed, the fatal encounter in the Bois de Boulogne became one of the main topics of conversation in the cafes and the boulevards. It was even discussed at the royal table of Louis Philippe. Soon an ugly rumor began to circulate that Charles de Jarier had not fallen in fair fight, that the duel had been marked by quite a number of irregularities. De Jarier's relatives sought not only compensation, but justice and revenge. Aided by friends as well as newspaper articles, they managed to persuade the authorities to sit up and take notice. Some months later, a high court ordered the immediate arrest of de Bourbon and Vicomte d'Ecre. Public feeling in Paris had reached such a pitch that it was felt an impartial jury could not be secured in that city. The trial, therefore, took place on March 26, 1846, in the Palais de Justice at Rouen. More than 30 witnesses were summoned, and these included Alexandre Dumas and Lola Montez. Although dueling was illegal in France, the law was virtually winked at, and the unwritten law held good, that honor must be satisfied. Briefly, the charge against the two prisoners was that, contrary to the rules of the game, de Beauvalon had been allowed to practice with the pistols beforehand, therefore gaining a distinct advantage over his opponent. If this could be proved, then the duel had amounted to virtual murder. As witness after witness was called by the Crown, it became evident that an attempt was being made to show that Beauvalon had forced the quarrel, which had been of a trivial nature. Many of these people had been guests at the supper party on the night in question, but when confronted now by the President, their memories proved strangely blank. And then Alexandre Dumas' name was called, and the man who was famous throughout France stepped briskly into the witness box. The President, however, like so many English judges, was not supposed or disposed to take common knowledge for granted.
And your occupation, Monsieur Dumas?
If I did not find myself here in the birthplace of the illustrious Corneille, I should call myself a dramatist.
Yes, just so. But there are degrees among dramatists, I believe.
Dumas' evidence consisted chiefly in a lengthy discourse on the history of dueling through the ages. Although he was firmly of the opinion that the accusation against the prisoners was fully justified, he could offer very little in the way of concrete proof.
I am the last man in France to suggest that honor should not be satisfied. Even so, I did my level best to bring about a friendly settlement of this dispute, because like everyone else, I knew that the odds were so heavily weighted against Du Jarier that he hadn't a chance. What did it matter if de Beauvalon had practiced with the pistols? I say to you, Monsieur le President, that de Beauvalon had already killed Du Jarier in the moment of uttering the challenge.
Lola Montez had been heavily veiled, and as she now stepped into the box, there was much nudging and whispering among the spectators. But when she uncovered her face, there followed a general gasp of amazement at its pale beauty and the large violet eyes that later were to bewitch a monarch and command his kingdom.
He told me the quarrel was with Roger Darcy, and God help me, I believed him. I could handle a pistol far better than poor Charles, and had I but known, I would gladly have gone out to meet de Beauvalon myself.
Vicomte d'Acqueville was the first of the two prisoners called upon to take the stand. The president examined him at great length, but without obtaining any new facts. The public prosecutor then rose to cross-examine.
It is a fact, is it not, that you led Dujarrier's seconds to believe that the pistols were your own property?
That is quite untrue.
Untrue. Do you then say that Alexandre Dumas, for one, has committed perjury in this court today?
No, madame. I merely say there was a misunderstanding.
Did you not tell Monsieur Dumas you had paid 700 francs for the pistols?
I did not. I said they had cost 700 francs.
But without adding the all-important fact that the pistols, in reality, belonged to de Beauvalon's brother-in-law, the editor of Le Globe.
Monsieur Dumas did not question me so closely.
Do you say that Dujarrier's seconds would have agreed to the use of those pistols had they been known to be the property of your principal's brother-in-law?
Monsieur Dumas had my word for it, that de Beauvalon had not practiced with them.
It is the reliability of your word, Vicomte d'Acqueville, that is on trial here today. No further questions.
It was with an air of suave self-confidence that de Beauvalon entered the box, and well might he feel optimistic, for he had briefed as his counsel no less a person than Maitre Barrière, acknowledged as the greatest master of forensic oratory in France. Thus he answered the president's questions boldly, and the hint of a smile often lurked in the corner of his mouth.
You have heard many witnesses state that they considered the grounds for this duel to have been trivial.
I myself was not of the same opinion, Monsieur le Président. I had every reason for demanding satisfaction.
You know that this young man, Charles Duryea, was quite unversed in the use of lethal weapons?
Yes, and had he but chosen the sword instead of the pistol, I might have been content merely to disarm him, or at any rate to teach him a lesson. As it was, he chose pistols. Am I to blame for what happened?
You have heard it said, Dujarrier's seconds, that after he'd been discharged his pistol and was obliged to stand still and wait, you took an unduly long time returning the fire.
I do not agree.
So long, in fact, that one of them, Roger Darcy, called out to you in desperation.
Monsieur the President, I have little doubt it was just that interruption which disturbed my aim, and with the fatal result. I had merely intended to inflict a flesh wound.
Nevertheless, do you swear on oath that you had not practiced with the weapons beforehand?
I swear it, Monsieur the President.
For the defense of the two prisoners, Maitre Barrière relied almost entirely upon his own brilliant powers of oratory. Towards the closing stages of a long speech, which dealt with hard facts rather than supposition and theory, it became evident that he was making a profound impression upon the stolid, unbiased Rouen jurymen.
Gentlemen, the question as to whether or not there were sufficient grounds for a duel between these two men is surely immaterial and wholly irrelevant to the accusations brought against the prisoners. Their delay in arriving at the appointed place on the morning of the encounter has also been explained. The cab was unduly slow. Moreover, they were obliged to call at the gunsmith on the way for powder. Surely this is a sufficient and natural enough explanation. On the other hand, we've heard much evidence and I think we have all grown tired of hearing it, that in this case the one, de Beauvalon, was an acknowledged master in the art of dueling, whilst the other, de Jarier, had never handled a weapon in his life? Monsieur le Président, gentlemen of the jury, I'm going to refer once again and finally to that same evidence. Whereas it has been freely wielded as a weapon for the prosecution, I now seek to wield it as the chief and obvious weapon for the defense. I'm going to ask you to inquire of yourselves, as sane individuals, whether a man like de Beauvalon, an expert shot, about to go out and meet an adversary who was, in effect, no more formidable than a child with a pistol in its hands, would take the trouble, or would have the smallest need to practice the weapon beforehand. Regard the matter in that light, and your answer must be that the accusation against the prisoners is laughable. So laughable that you and I, and all of us here in this court today, are but wasting our valuable time.
After a short address by the President, the jury retired to consider their verdict. They left behind them a courtroom that was stifled in a tense atmosphere of speculation and argument. Half an hour later, they began to file back into their places.
Mr. Foreman, you have arrived at a declaration?
We have, Monsieur the President.
Do you find the accusation against the prisoners to be true?
On my honor and on my conscience, before God and before man, the declaration of the jury is that it is not true.
The prisoners are found not guilty and will be released forthwith.
Stop, Monsieur the President! The prisoners must not be released!
Who dares to interrupt? Have these people arrested for contempt?
But Monsieur the President, we have fresh evidence, a new witness.
Then it is too late.
Are you sure of this? Where is the fellow?
He is here, Madam the Prosecutor.
Order! Order in the court!
Monsieur le Président, as you rightly say, the trial here today of Rosamond de Beauvalon and the Vicomte d'Ecquerville on charges amounting to murder has closed in the prisoner's favor and can never again be reopened. But I beg you, in the interests of justice, to hear the evidence of a witness who was only this minute arrived from Paris by horse and cart. A man who has hitherto kept silence because he feared for his job, but a man who in the 11th hour has succumbed to his conscience.
I must object! The trial is concluded! The prisoners have been found not guilty and are entitled to immediate discharge.
As Maître Berrier says, they are entitled to be discharged. At the same time, Monsieur le Président, it is within your power to forbid them to leave this court until...
I fail to see what useful purpose can be served.
But you will see, Monsieur le Président, and you will no doubt consider what further steps should be taken in this deplorable matter.
Very well. So long as it is clearly understood that nothing can disturb the jury's recent finding. I will hear this whisper.
Call Andre Laval.
Yes, madame.
By whom are you employed?
By the Vicomte d'Ecquerville.
Do you remember the morning of March 11th last year?
I do, madame.
What time did you arrive at your work on that morning?
Soon after daybreak, getting on for 8 o'clock.
Was there anyone else about in the garden at that early hour?
Well, I did not think so. Not to begin with. That is, not until I heard the...
Will you tell the President exactly what you heard and saw?
Well, madame, I heard the pistol shots, and it frightened me at first, until I looked over the edge into the kitchen garden. There I saw the master and the Monsieur de Beauvalon had a pistol in each hand, and I watched him shooting at a target marked out on the wall at the bottom end. After a bit, it seemed as I thought, suddenly they caught sight of me. For the master quickly hid the pistols under his cloak, and they walked back to the house.
And you are quite positive that that was on the morning of March 11th, last year?
Madame, the 11th of March is my birthday.
Vicomte d'Escoville and Rosamond de Beaumont, it seems that Providence alone has spared you both from a conviction for murder. But if this man had spoken the truth, and I see no reason to doubt his word, then you are both proved to be arrogant liars and a disgrace to the honor of France. I therefore order you both to be rearrested and charged with perjury.
And André Laval's evidence was later corroborated by facts. Traces of the target, roughly marked out with a sharp stone, were found on the wall of the kitchen garden. Moreover, even in those days, before the use of bullets, experts were able to say that the indentations visible on the wall had been caused by balls from the identical pistols used in the duel. In the trial for perjury, which took place some weeks later, both prisoners were found guilty and sentenced to 10 years imprisonment. Thus was played out the final sequel to the most famous and sensational duel in the modern history of France. And yet, just as men and women have often given their lives in a seemingly unknown cause, so was Charles de Jarier's tragic death to prove a stepping stone along the path of civilization. For it is a fact that the rapid decline in the practice of dueling, which marked the latter half of the 19th century, can be traced directly to that bleak March morning of 1845 in the Bois de Boulogne.